Glad to see everybody here this year. This is the 19th annual memorial. It's the 20th memorial since the fire. They had one during the month of June in 1993 while I was in jail, so I didn't attend that one. It's hard to, when you think back, it's hard to sum up all that happened during the 51 days siege in 1993. We're here today to basically remember and pay our respects to those who died, and to bring out some things that we've learned since then as far as what took place. And so we ask that you bear with us. One of my speakers hasn't showed up, so they told me to just keep talking. One of my speakers hasn't turned up. One is here but chose not to speak. So what we want to do is to ask Catherine Wessinger if she will come forward at this time. Catherine Wessinger is a professor from Louisiana, from Loyola University. She's been involved over the last few years in writing the history of the survivors. She's interviewed Catherine Madison before she passed. She helped write a book for Bonnie Haldeman before she passed away. She's done a book for Sheila. And as you'll see over here, there is a book supposed to be coming out in August that she has worked on with me. She's going to talk a little bit about that, but also about some evidence that she's discovered as she read through the logs that were released through the Freedom of Information Act and so forth, and some things she wants to share with you. So I'll ask Catherine to come up at this time.
Well, of course, this is a time of memorial, and but first I want to acknowledge Matthew Whitmer, who's co-editor of Clive's book. And Matt has drawn some really incredible floor plans and diagrams of the building, which are they're over here, and they're just really outstanding. So I encourage you to take a look at that. But after we got finished with Clive's book, it's off at the printer right now, or not the printer. It's with the publisher. It's being prepared for the printer. And so I started reading through a log. It's called the FBI Event Log, and it's a 594-page document. It's available in the Lee Hancock collection at the archive at Texas State University in San Marcos. And Lee Hancock is a reporter with the Dallas Morning News, and somebody in the FBI was leaking to her a number of very interesting documents. And okay, I'll try to speak louder. That's not a micro. Is that a microphone?
It's just a recorder.
Pardon?
Yes.
It's for them. Okay. All right. I'll try to speak as loud as I can, or maybe I'll come over here.
Go back.
Okay. All right. Go back. All right, it's the vacuum cleaner and my voice. All right, I'll try to speak as loud as I can. So I've spent the last month and a half reading through a 594-page log produced by the FBI. It was not intended for public consumption. It was an internal document. What it does is it's a compilation of various logs. So, within the agency, you had the HRT, the Hostage Rescue Team, they had their log. The negotiators, they had their log. Back in the Hoover Building in Washington, D.C., you have something called SIOC. That's Strategic Information and Operations Center. All the guys, the FBI agents who were out at, here in Waco on the case in '93, their commanders were reporting constantly back to SIOC. SIOC was directly involved in all the decisions that were being made. And then somewhere, somebody within the FBI took all these various diverse logs and pulled out entries and then put them into a compiled event log, and that's what I've been reading, okay? And so there are various agendas in the log, and you can see the various agendas of the negotiators, HRT, SIOC. So obviously we know there are various agendas in the log, but despite the agendas, and the agendas are interesting to talk about, but you also gain very interesting information that we don't have otherwise. So I thought I'd just share with you some of the things that I learned. Also, I was reading the event log in conjunction with reading a book by the man who was the negotiation coordinator he was negotiation coordinator from March 1 through March 24th. His name is Gary Nessner, and he's got a book. It was published in 2010 entitled Stalling for Time. And he also gives some very interesting information on what was going on behind the scenes with the FBI. And those of us who have been concerned about what happened and have studied what happened, it's been very obvious that the actions of the HRT, the tactical actions, were undermining the negotiations. And every time, quite a few children came out early on, but later when adults started, every time adults would come out, the HRT would do something to punish the Branch Davidians, which would discourage people from coming out. And what Gary Nessner reveals in his book is that even the negotiators thought that the negotiations were being undermined. And that's why he got pulled off the case, because by March 25th, they called him back, out of Waco, and they sent somebody else in because he confronted Jeffrey Jamar about the tactics, and then he got a call that night, and they took him off the case. So it's I don't agree with everything he says in his book about the religion and all that, but nevertheless, there's some interesting information in his chapter, relevant chapter in that book. Okay. It's a bit hard for me to know where to start because there's so much to highlight, and of course I want to wrap it up in time to memorialize everybody. But looks like I've got a little bit of time, so here we go. Well, I mean, we're familiar with the events and who came out, but I'm going to start here with March 12th. And March 12th is the day that Kathy Schroeder came out. And then also later that afternoon at 6 p.m., Oliver Garforth came out. And then that night, suddenly the electricity got turned off. And interesting thing happened that night. Of course, there were bugs inside, and so one of the bugs picked up David dictating an SOS message to be flashed through one of the windows using a flashlight. And of course the FBI saw that, and then the next night is when they brought in the spotlights. So the spotlights were there to harass the people inside the residence, but also critically, I think, to prevent anyone on the outside seeing the SOS messages. Also, the next day, March 13th, Jeffrey Jamar, the on-scene commander, told the negotiators that they should not make any effort to call in to do any negotiations. So the log reveals that Jamar was directing the negotiations, but he was always in touch with SIOC. They were fully on board with the decisions that were being made. By March 15th, that's when they started using the combat engineering vehicles to push the lumber back behind the building. Clive in his book talks about how they pushed it up in a big pile, and that looked ominous to the people inside. March 16th is kind of interesting. On March 16th, Mike Panera, the lead guitarist of Iron Butterfly, called the FBI. And he recommended that the agents use the loudspeakers to play Inagata Davida over and over again at the Branch Davidians to drive them out of the residence. He said it worked during the Vietnam War, and he said that he even offered to bring Iron Butterfly to Mount Carmel and they would play it in person. So that's the first mention of the using the irritating high decibel sounds as a kind of a psychological warfare. It comes from Mike Panera of Iron Butterfly. But also on that day, a special agent in charge arrived from El Paso by the name of Dick Schwein, and he took over the evening shift. Jamar had the day shift, Schwein had the evening shift, and he was very much responsible for implementing the high decibel sounds through the night, but again with approval from SIOC. On March 17th, SIOC ordered negotiators to take a hardline approach. What they meant by that was set a deadline. Say, have 10 people out by 1 p.m. The buses are there. If they didn't come out, something would be destroyed. And so that, all the destruction that we saw during the siege, a lot of that was in response to setting that deadline and people not coming out. But they got that order from SIOC at 9:35 a.m. in the morning, but at 10:15 a.m. the negotiation team enters this log, and it says, I'm quoting, Koresh has set up this situation and is trying to fulfill a prophecy in which he dies. And then it mentions a psychiatrist by name, and it says this psychiatrist should say this idea over national media. And then a particular negotiator was tasked with calling the psychiatrist so he would say that idea over national media. So that's the first entry in the log that I see of manipulating the national media. March 18th, they started removing the fuel tanks. Clive talks about that in his book. March 19th, two men came out. They're here today, Brad Branch and Kevin Whitecliffe, and I didn't note what time you guys came out, but you did. What time was it? Well, anyway, you guys came out on March 19th. The next day, though, the next night, Jamar, on March 20th, Jamar spoke with an official in SIOC, and this is quoting from the log. It was agreed that we seem to get more productive results when we put pressure on compound. Okay, so that was the entry for March 20th. However, they didn't really ramp it up until a little bit later, because on March 21st, 7 people came out. Early in the morning, it was Victorine Hollingsworth and Annetta Richards. At 11 a.m., Rita Riddle, Gladys Ottman. 12:58 p.m., Sheila Martin, Ophelia Santoyo, James Lauder. They got 7 people out. But that night, later in the afternoon, early evening, the tanks destroyed some vehicles, And it was that evening that they started playing the high decibel irritating sounds through the night. Okay, so a very successful day getting people out, and then they ramped up the psychological warfare. Anyway, this is where Nessner had a confrontation with Jamar, and he got pulled off the case, and he was pulled off by March 25th, and other people came in as, somebody else came in as negotiation coordinator, but the negotiation coordinator was not Byron Sage, but he was still playing a pretty significant role. March 28th, this is when David Koresh received a telephone call from his attorney, Dick DeGuerin, who had been retained by his mother. And then that was followed on March 29th, March 30th, March 31, April 1. You know, Dick DeGuerin came to Mount Carmel, went inside numerous times, spent many hours inside talking to people. And then later, Jack Zimmerman came, the attorney who was representing Steve Schneider, and a lot was accomplished during those talks. But interestingly, let's see, on April 6th, there's an interesting entry because the guy who was the head of the negotiation unit based at Quantico called SIOC, and this is what the log said. He called to request any update on any possible contingency plans to deal with Koresh should he fail to leave the compound at the end of his Holy Week. And then it goes on to say, he was told that no definitive plans have been agreed upon. Furthermore, no deadlines have been set. That was at 8:35 a.m. However, at 3:30 p.m., SIOC logged that a request from the HRT to the Army at Fort Hood for 48 illumination rounds and 36 Ferret CS rounds had needed authorization from higher up in the Army. So the guy at Fort Hood couldn't give that authorization. So HRT was then advised so that they could seek that authorization to get the Ferret rounds that were obviously shot in on April 19th. So here you've got the negotiation big boss being told no deadlines, nothing's planned, nothing is in the works, but yet they're in the process of ordering the Ferret rounds, and SIOC knew that. Toward the end of the siege, the FBI became aware that the Branch Davidians were collecting rainwater in a little alcove or courtyard, and they very much did not want them to do that. And so they started, and you can see the alcove. It's to the right of the central tower. It's on Matt's diagram that's over there on the table. And so when people would go out to where they were collecting water, FBI HRT guys would start throwing in flashbang grenades. And this happened a lot. So it happened for the first time apparently on April 7th. 2 flashbangs thrown at people or fired at people in the courtyard. April 9th is very interesting because that was Good Friday. And Steve Schneider, who spent the most of the time on the telephone with the negotiators, he requested to be permitted to go outside between 3 and 4 p.m., the hour regarded as when Christ died on the cross. And he wanted to light 7 canisters of what he called incense. They seemed to be some kind of smoke canisters because they emitted orange smoke. So they gave him permission to go out, and he lined them up, and he pulled the tab and released the orange smoke during that time. And that, but at 6:30 p.m., an HRT agent advised SIOC that per Special Agent in Charge Jamar and HRT Commander Dick Rogers, quote, there will be no plan to fight a fire should one develop in the Davidian compound. Okay, so that decision is in the log as of April 9th in response to the, the incense incident on Good Friday. Also, they're ratcheting up the harassment of the Branch Davidians. At 7 p.m. that night, Steve Schneider came out the front door because somebody in a tank beckoned him. A lot of times the telephone line wasn't working, it would get run over by the tanks. And so it was not unusual for somebody to come up in a tank and beckon for him to come out and talk to them, and then they'd work on getting the phone lines fixed. So they beckoned, he came out, and they threw a flashbang grenade at him, and which of course unnerved him badly. Also that evening, somebody else was in the courtyard who got flashbanged. By April 10th, they were laying concertina wire around the building. Clive talks about witnessing that. Also, on April 10th, the negotiators start asking questions about the pregnant women and the children inside. And so they wanted to know the due dates of the pregnant women, and Steve told them. And I'll mention that again in just a minute. On April 14th, this is the end, Passover ended April 13th, so April 14th, David wrote his letter saying that he would write his manuscript, his little book on the 7 seals, and then they would come out. He was going to give the manuscript to Dick DeGuerin, his attorney, and who would then give it to two Bible scholars, Dr. James Tabor and Dr. Phil Arnold, and then they were coming out. And so beginning at 10:21 a.m., Dick DeGuerin spoke with Steve by the phone, and apparently he read the letter to them. And so by 12:50 p.m., Byron Sage, the negotiator, reported this new development to SIOC about the plan, writing the book and then coming out. By that afternoon, Steve and Judy Schneider were starting to request typewriter supplies, and because they had an a battery-operated word processor that they were trying to use, because they didn't have electricity, because the electricity was turned on. I think it's kind of heartwarming but poignant that by that afternoon, Neil Vega apparently was very excited about the prospect of coming out, and so he started hanging out banners outside the windows, little friendly banners. He goes, 3 banners: read Proverbs 1, 2, 3, 4, we come to love, not war. Another banner, let's have a beer when this is over. And the 3rd banner, my name is Neil Vega, I'm from Hawaii. Okay, so series of 3 of it. And then about 30 minutes later, he hung out 3 more banners. He goes, media and FBI don't know the truth, you can't accept the truth, we could still have a few beers together. And that's one banner. The next one is, I'm an American, I love America, but BATF killed my family and friends. Okay. So SIOC at this point knows that David has a plan to write his book and come out. But the log at 6:11 p.m., SIOC called an HRT agent at Waco and asked him to prepare a notification list should assault take place. Anyway, I'll clarify that in a minute. Also, though, at 6:45 p.m., Greg Summers brought out a packet to give to the HRT guys in one of the tanks, and David had signed his contract with his attorney, so it's a retainer contract with the attorney. So I think that's a clear sign that he was planning on coming out, because he signed the contract. And that was the first step. He also at that time sent the letter that had been read to them previously about writing his little book. Also, later that evening, though, SIOC called back the agent at the Waco command post and gave further details about what do they mean by notification list. And basically he was told to list people in a timeline format relevant to who should be contacted prior to, during, and after assault plan is initiated. So it's a list of people in the government who should be notified. April 15th, negotiations logged an entry called health concerns about the 2 pregnant women, and that Nicole Gent was 5 months pregnant, and Aisha Garfus was due in May. That's what they logged. Somebody else was flashbanged. So David is writing his book, but on April 16th at 1:15 a.m., a tank runs into the building. And apparently it was at the room right where Graham Craddock was sleeping, probably in his bunk bed. But apparently Graham was so out of it, even though it rammed the building and pushed the building in about 1.5 feet, Graham didn't wake up, and David Thibodeau had to wake him up and get him out of there. So, again, just one more thing to disrupt the plan to come out. Steve and Judy are still asking for typewriter supplies. April 17th, that's when the Janet Reno, they got the approval from Attorney General Janet Reno to for the assault on April 19th. They had the meeting with her starting at 5 p.m. By 7 p.m., the log shows that the plan was approved. Then that evening, an official in SIOC called the HRT commander's Dick Rogers, and he read the rules of engagement to Dick Rogers. The rules of engagement are not in the log, but what is in the log, he also read to Dick Rogers a document entitled Stipulations with Regards to the Use of CS, which is very interesting, and I'm summarizing here. Number 1, if during insertion if subjects say we must back off or will harm the children, we back off and continue to negotiate. Number 2, if a subject is viewed threatening children, if there is a clear shot, the subject will be shot. Number 3, if subjects are threatening the children but cannot be seen, we back off. Number 4, be sure that all who leave the compound following insertion of CS are interviewed concerning the location and condition of the children. Number 5, the mere presence of a child in a door or opening does not stop insertion of CS. And number 6, and this time I'm quoting from the log, it says, if mass suicides are indicated, proceed with emergency rescue plan is briefed. The welfare of the children is paramount in this operation. Okay. So a little bit later, another official called and read the same documents to Special Agent in Charge Jeffrey Jamar. So Jamar and Dick Rogers were both clear on these instructions. April 18th, they removed the remaining vehicles from the front of the building. They complete the installation of concertina wire. They talk about having a funnel there at the driveway. Clyde, when he escaped from the chapel side, ran into the concertina wire, and then you came out the funnel. Okay. Steve and Judy are still asking for, they were asking for a cassette typewriter ribbon for this electric word processor. They were also asking for batteries, but they were told that the commander would not allow them to receive batteries at this time. Somehow they rigged up batteries anyway, because we know that Ruth Riddle brought out a computer, a floppy disk with, David's, the first seal, his incomplete manuscript with the first seal. Those of us who've studied the negotiations know that all throughout the negotiations, the Branch Davidians kept asking for milk for the children. A lot of times they didn't get milk right away. A lot of times the milk was kind of like held hostage to get more children sent out, and then children would be sent out and the milk still wouldn't be sent in on some occasions. And then also, but every now and then they would send in 6 gallons of milk. But on the night of April 18th, first of all, the typewriter ribbon cassettes were delivered. No batteries for the typewriter, for the word processor. But the negotiators, for the first time without being asked, sent in milk for the children. So that was the evening of April 18th. Okay, so we get to April 19th. There's a different log. This log event log doesn't really have much on April 19th, but there's a separate log for April 19th that I'm going to start referring to. And basically it shows that special agents in charge, Jamar and Schwein, and another guy were in the forward tactical command post. I don't know where that is, but I'm going to guess it's the undercover house, which is now destroyed. It's not there anymore, but it's the house across the street that the ATF used as the undercover house, and I think the FBI continued to use it as their forward operations center. So that's where they were. Then there was a rear tactical command post where Dick Rogers was located. His call number was HRT1. So I think we can presume that was Dick Rogers. I don't know where the RTOC, the Rear Tactical Operating System, was, but I think a good guess is the barn in the back that was behind the building. Then Special Agent in Charge Bob Wicks, who had been handling the press briefings, he remained at the command center, which was over at the Texas State Technical College. But now on April 19th it's called OSC, Operations Support Center. So that's where he's located. So I'm going to just mention a few things from the April 19th log. At 1:25 a.m., a physician, a pediatric burn specialist from the Galveston Burn Clinic, called and talked to an agent and offered his assistance if needed. Just out of the blue in this log. So it's not hard to imagine that he was returning somebody's call, but we don't know. The log doesn't tell us. As we know, the assault started at 6 a.m. The log only reports the audio from 2 bugs, but there were actually more bugs. There were a total of 11 bugs throughout the siege. A lot of them got thrown out or destroyed during the siege. We don't know how many bugs were operating during the assault on April 19th. But in 1999, Colonel Rodney Rawlings was talked to Lee Hancock with the Dallas Morning News, and he told her that he was present there during the assault. He was the head military liaison between the FBI and the Army, basically. And he said he and the FBI agents were listening to the surveillance devices in real time, the audio from the surveillance devices in real time. And he said that they were using the audio from the bugs to direct the tanks where to go. And he also told her that they could hear the children and the mothers inside the concrete vault at the base of the central tower, in his words, crying, talking, and praying. Okay. So we can assume there are more bugs that they were listening to than what get reported in the log. All right. So here's what the log, just a few things from the log. At 8:25 a.m., SIOC requested that a remote camera be placed on a tank boom to look inside rooms for subjects before the building is torn down. That's what the log says. There was a lot of things going on, and I'm not going to recount everything, but, Clive in his book, he talks about how at one point he decided he wanted to get a bottle of water that he had left in his room. And the log reports that about 10:15 a.m. a man is seen through one of the front windows with a gas mask on, looking around for something in one of the rooms, And then he picks up something solid and then leaves. Okay, so I think they saw Clive. But moving ahead here, 11:55 a.m., HRT-1, that's Dick Rogers, advised the SAC and the OSC, that would be Bob Ricks at the command center, quote, that foodstuffs at base of tower gassed, occupants fled moments before. And then Ricks at the OSC says he advised HRT-1 to order the clearing of the area on the front area so they can exit quickly, safely. Then, of course, the SIOC logged at 12:11 p.m. that the fire, it says, quote, fire started at compound appears to have been started by them. Excuse me, let me start over again. Fire started at compound appears to have started by them having torched it. That's a quote. 12:13 p.m. It was RTOC logs. Fire department assistance requested. 12:13 p.m. RTOC records HRT-1 radioing to OSC operation, over there at the command center. They're torching the place. At 12:20 p.m., SIOC log. The interesting thing about this log is that it's very clear that SIOC, this command center in the Hoover Building in Washington, D.C., they were listening to the bugs, they were watching the video, they were listening to all the communications between the agents there. They were listening to all of that in real time. When they even knew when Graham went out to signal that the telephone line had been cut by the tank, and they named him, and they go, Graham outside trying to fix telephone line, So the SIOC knew what was going on in real time. So at 12:20 p.m., SIOC logs 5 people coming out in all directions. 12:24 p.m., RTOC logs try to determine where the children are. That was a command from HRT-1. 12:34 p.m., SIOC logs fire trucks arrived and going right into compound. 12:35 p.m., RTOC logged. HRT-1 says, get any fire units up now. 12:36 p.m., SIOC logs. 5 burned and a lot more out. Front white side windows, the white is the front side, observed individuals lighting fires. People clearly seen lighting fires by FBI personnel and forward TOC, seen with binoculars. In Clive's book, he talks about how the government tried to make that argument in the during the criminal trial, and it was just proved to be totally false. So, but anyway, they're logging that at 12:36 p.m. 12:41 p.m. RTOC logs. Fire engines pulling up now. 12:59 p.m. RTOC logs. Children may be in pit area by buried bus. Anyway, and then skipping ahead to 10:30 p.m. The log says, ATF assumes investigative responsibility. ATF established crime scene perimeters and assumed investigative responsibility of the site.
In any of the logs, did they mention the Delta Force at all?
Oh, no, of course not. No.
They're the ones that planted the sound.
Yeah. We can, I suggest obviously we know what was being logged doesn't match with what other things that we've learned and various, but let's move on to the memorial part and we can have discussion later.
Normally we try to have the reading of the names about the time the fire started, which from the records that we've had access to took place about 9 after 12. So before we do anything else, I think we will go ahead and remember those that died there at Mount Carmel. Most of you are familiar, those that have been coming for years are familiar with the names as we read them each year. I've presented them in different ways to try to make it interesting. I've presented them as by the countries they were from. I've presented them alphabetical, different formats. A lot of times we forget, as Kathy mentioned in her talk, the horror of the ones that came out, the horror of the ones that died at Mount Carmel has been with us all this time. You know, what most people don't remember or perhaps think less of is all the ones that came out during the negotiations. There was something like 35 or so people that came out as a result of the negotiations, and we want to remember them too today. And so I'm going to begin with those that died on February 28th. We don't have a special memorial each year on February 28th, but that's when it all started with the shootout by the ATF. Those who died February 28th, Winston Blake from England, he was 28. Peter Gent, age 24, from Australia. Peter Hipsman, an American citizen, he was 28. Perry Jones, who was 64, an American citizen. Michael Schroeder, 29. He's the one that was actually shot later on in the afternoon as he tried to get back into the property and was left laying in the creek bed for several days before the body was recovered. And J. Dean Wendell, who was 34, an American citizen from Hawaii. There were also 4 BATF agents that died on February 28th. Conway LeBleu, 34. Todd McKeon, 28. Stephen Willis, 32. And Rob Williams, 26. Those that died on April 19th, Nicole Gent Little, 24, from Australia. She was the twin sister of Peter. Dalen Gent, age 3. Pages Gent, aged 1. And an aborted fetus from Nicole that was aborted during the fire. Aisha Gaiaphas Summers was 17, an Australian of Hungarian extraction. She was died in the fire. Startle Summers, age 1, and her aborted baby that died during the fire as well. A big percentage of those that died in the fire were from England. A lot of them of Jamaican extraction, but all British subjects. We had Ulrich Bennett, age 35. Susan Benter, 31. Abadwali Davies, age 30. Unlike most of the others, he was from Nigeria, not Jamaica. Yvette Fagan, who was Livingston Fagan's wife, age 30. 32. And Doris Fagan, Livingston Fagan's mother, age 51. You had Beverly Elliott, age 30. Sandra Hardiel, 27. Diana Henry, 28. Pauline Henry, 24. Philip Henry, 22. Stephen Henry, 26. Vanessa Henry, 19. And the mother of these children, Zilla Henry, doesn't have her age correct here. Livingston Malcolm, 26. Diane Martin, 41, no relation to Sheila. John Mark McBain, 27. Bernadette Monbelli, 31. Melissa Morrison, age 6. Rosemary Morrison, 29. Sonia Murray, 29. Teresa Nobrega, 48. And Clifford Sellers, 33. Of all of those, Cliff Sellers was the only white subject from England. All of the rest were black. Like I said, most of them from Jamaica. Canadians who died April 19th. Raymond Friesen, 76. He was an American citizen but was born in Canada. And Novelette Sinclair Hipsman, 36. You also had Pablo Cohen, who was originally from Argentina but was discovered, met by David in Israel, so he was an Israeli citizen. And Rebecca Sapir, who was a Samoan of New Zealand nationality. You have Catherine Andrade, age 24, Argentinian background, but an American citizen. You have a daughter, Chanel Andrade, age 1, and you have her sister, Jennifer Andrade, 19. You have Mary Jean Borst, 49. Sherry Doyle. Age 18. Excuse me. Lisa Marie Ferris, 24. Floyd Houtman, 61. Sherry Jewell, 43. David M. Jones, 38. Rachel Koresh, 24. Cyrus Howell Koresh, age 8. Star Howell Koresh, age 6. And Bobby Lane Koresh, age 2. Jeffrey Little, 32. Anita Marie Martin, 18. Douglas Wayne Martin, 42. Lisa Marie Martin, 13. Sheila Renee Martin, 15. And Wayne Martin, 20. Juliet Santoyo, age 30. Crystal Barrios, age 3. Isaiah Taco Barrios, age 4. Joseph Martinez, age 8. Abigail Martinez, 11. And Audrey Martinez, 13. James Riddle, age 32. Steve Schneider, 43. Judy Schneider, 41. Mina Schneider, age 2. Scott Kojiro Sonobi, age 35. Florcita Sonobi, age 34. Gregory Summers, age 28. Lorraine Sylvia, age 40. Rachel Sylvia, 12. Hollywood Sylvia, age 1. Michelle Jones Thibodeau, age 18. Serenity C. Jones, age 4. Little One Jones, age 2. And Chica Jones, age 2. They were twins. Neil Vega, age 38. Margarita Vega, 47. Mark Wendell, age 40. I want to read the names of those that were survivors at this point, which we don't always do. From Australia, you have Graham Craddock, Clive Doyle. I'm an American citizen, but I'm originally from Australia. Edna Doyle, my mother, who has since died, and Oliver Gaiaphas. British survivors were Norman Allison, Renus Avram, Livingston Fagan and his 2 children, Nahara, and I'm sorry, but I forgot the name of the daughter. Renee? Okay, thank you. Victorine Hollingsworth, who was originally from Guyana, but was a British citizen. She has since died. Derek Lovelock, Natalie Nebrega, and Marjorie Thomas. Canadian survivors, Gladys Ottman, Ruth Ottman Riddle Villarreal, and Annetta Richards. U.S. survivors, Conception Acuna, since deceased. Brad Branch, who's with us here today. Jamie Castillo, deceased. Jamie, for those of you that remember, was one of the guys in prison that died shortly after being released. Clive Doyle, I guess I got myself on both lists. A U.S. citizen. Karen Doyle, Paul Fatter, Kalani Fatter, Misty Ferguson, Tilly Friesen, who's since deceased, Heather Jones, Kathy Jones, Kevin Jones, Mark Jones, and Mary Jones. Janet Kendrick, Woodrow Bob Kendrick, Margaret Lawson, James Lauder, who is deceased now. Janet McBean, Chrissy Mabb, Jake Mabb, Scott Mabb, Daniel Martin, Jamie Martin, who's since deceased, Kimberly Martin, Sheila Martin, Trudy Meyer, now deceased, Rita Riddle, Catherine Schroeder, Brian Schroeder, Angelica Sonobi Craigie, Crystal Sonobi Craigie, Joshua Sylvia, Stan Sylvia, David Thibodeau, Joanne Vega, Janessa Wendell, Landon Wendell, Patron Wendell, and Tamara Wendell. There's one other name I want to bring to you. He was not around at Mount Carmel at the time of the siege or after the siege per se, but he was a young guy that came down from New Bedford with Floyd Hauptman and Stan Sylvia way back at the beginning of David's message. His name was Victor Barreto. He has since deceased as of January the 2nd this year. The book of Isaiah, chapter 57, verses 1 and 2 says, "The righteous perisheth, and no man layeth it to heart. And merciful men are taken away, none considering that the righteous is taken away from the evil to come. He shall enter into peace, they shall rest in their beds, each one walking in his uprightness." From the book of Psalms, chapter 12, verse 1 and 7, "Help, Lord, for the godly man ceaseth, for the faithful fail from among the children of men. Thou shalt keep them, O Lord, thou shalt preserve them from this generation forever." At this time, we have with us Connie Hildebrecht from Kansas. She has a song that she's going to share with us, and when she gets through, I'll announce what the next plans are, so you know what's going on for the rest of the day.
No, I did not bring a, is it gonna mess up the,
You need to speak into
I
the
just-
microphone, I think. Okay.
see, I didn't bring a strap. I usually
Oh, well,
do from,
I don't
Is
think
it-
you can move it.
okay.
Do you want
Not
to
gonna be
need to
able to
hold
move
that for you?
No. Yeah, if I can get, yeah, if I can get near the mic.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's exactly what I need. Thank you very much.
You want it
Yeah.
over there?
Just right behind here would be awesome.
She goes up there.
Yeah. Either that or to the side, it really doesn't matter. Thank you. Thank you, Clive.
Can you make it?
Can you?
I can.
Okay.
Thank you. Is that going to work it? Okay. Thank you very much. I want to share very quickly a scripture that that song is really based on, loosely. And it's Psalm 84, 5 through 7. "Blessed is the man whose strength is in you, whose heart is set on pilgrimage." The NIV says, who have set their heart on pilgrimage. "As they pass through the valley of weeping," and there will be valleys of weeping, and some of you have gone through incredible valleys of weeping, "they make it a place of springs. The rain covers it with pools. They go from strength to strength. Each one appears before God in Zion. There's pain, and we can't afford to let it just be a monument that stops it. And I appreciate people like my friend Clive who have gone forth with a book like that and are making it, rather than just making it a monument, you're making it a well. Because there were so many things that happened that we can never afford to happen again. And we just have to speak out, and we have to, as we go through that valley of weeping, not make it a monument, but make it a well. Just dig the well and let God fill it. There are days that take your breath away. Some days bring so much pain. You find you're in a valley. Life won't be the same again. Some moments just can't be undone. Some days tattoo your heart. You can stop there as a monument, or find the strength to make a start. But this is grief too deep to waste, too painful not to tell, too great to build a monument. You've got to through valley you thought you'd never see, and the pain comes to engulf you and changes all your dreams. Let God's mercy lead you through it, give you a story you can tell. Don't build a monument, leave a well. Don't build a monument, leave a well. A well shows weary travelers in the valley filled with tears, that there is healing past the hurting, faith stronger than their fears. Sometimes the greatest purpose a shattered heart can find is to grab some hope and leave a trail for the ones who come behind. And the valley will be different, a place of springs no longer still, because you did to dig a well that only God can fill. So when you're going through valley you thought you'd never see, and the pain comes to engulf you, changes all your dreams. Let God's mercy lead you through it, give you a story you can tell. Don't build a monument, leave a well. Don't build a monument, leave a well. A monument is lifeless proof of what men's hands of how God's mercy brought you through. So when you're going through a valley that you thought you'd never see, the pain comes to engulf you, changes all your dreams. Let God's mercy lead you through it, give you a story you can tell. Don't build a monument, leave a well. Don't build a monument, leave a well. And after the meeting, I brought copies of the lyrics. If anyone would like it, feel free to take one.
Did everybody get to meet Brad and Kevin?
Kevin wasn't on the list.
I didn't know they were coming until yesterday, so I'd like you two guys to come on up. Brad and Kevin were two of the guys that went through the trial in San Antonio. Unfortunately, they were found guilty, supposedly.
That was a heartfelt meeting.
Got all the good stuff.
So they were some of the ones that got stuck in the prison system, not unlike Bob and Norman and I, who walked away from San Antonio. These guys spent some time. A couple of years back, we had Paul here, and we never did get Jamie to come for a memorial, and he's no longer with us. So I just want to introduce you. This is Brad. This is Kevin Wycliffe on the right, and I know Brad has a burden on his heart. He'd really like to see the memorial being held out at Mount Carmel. There have been others that have expressed that concept to me, probably especially some of the people from Austin who helped build the chapel out there. But I've also had quite a number that normally come that don't want it out there. And I'm always torn between the problem of who do you try to please, sort of thing.
Please God.
Well, that's true, but you know, when you got people threatening, well, if you have it out there, we're not coming anymore, as opposed to if you don't have it out there, we're not coming, and you kind of get caught in the middle.
Then please yourself.
Next year is the 20th anniversary. What do you all think about having it at Mount Carmel?
Clive, this is Clive. I'm here and I live at Mount Carmel. I've been made the caretaker, the taxpayer, the everything out there. And I'm telling you that you need to come out there and keep the memorial there from now on. I've been telling you that almost every year, but nobody's listening. But now you're getting people that are telling you we need to put it out there. We built a kitchen out there. It's not finished. We have water out there now. Connie, we do need a well. Not just a well of information, but a well of water. Again, because the government destroyed that. And no one's going to do it for us unless we do it for ourselves. You understand that? And I believe we all need to get together because we're all a part of this tapestry that God, the Holy Spirit's weaving. And we need to remember that. We need to respect one another. We need to respect one another's opinions. But we also need to respect God. And God put us out there, Clive. I'm living there now. I feel like y'all abandoned it. I don't know why. Your mother's grave needs attention.
Is this just a vote for the 20th?
No, this is forever.
No, this vote right today. Is this for next year only?
Tommy,
Well, we need to address
I
next year
want people
first.
to go out there and be welcome there, okay?
Is this a vote for next year?
We don't have any immediate plans, but I would like to see it at Mount Carmel. I would like more of a presence of the memorial and the remembrance of those that died for their beliefs at Mount Carmel to be remembered where they are laying.
Where they were trespassed in 1993.
Pardon me?
Where they were trespassed in 1993. That's where we should have the memorial.
Amen. I agree. And I'm
And there's
saying you're all
no,
welcome to come there
there
and
doesn't seem to be any argument that the church owns the property. So the church will decide, where and when things are done. We don't have any immediate plans at this time.
Will you lead the memorial?
Of course, Clyde is going to be involved.
If I'm still around.
God willing.
Jeff, were you wanting to say something before we break for lunch?
I think I would.
I would like to say one thing. Kevin is a surviving believer.
Though I didn't make it on your list.
We just want to make it known that, yes, we still
didn't
do
mention
believe
you,
what
I'm sorry.
David-
Somehow
We got choked up
I
on
thought that was
Victor.
okay. I didn't have to make a
what
speech.
about Barney Haldeman?
We just want to make known that we still believe all the beliefs that David Koresh held, and that we have more beliefs, that the faith continues. And if anyone would like to get in touch with us, you can do that. We're at www.sevenseals.com. You can read our message. You can contact us anytime you like. And I'm kind of hungry, that's why I'm kind of too much
Yeah,
coffee.
I know you're all waiting to get to the
Too
food,
much coffee.
but a few months ago,
We've come a long way. We drove in from San Antonio this morning.
A few months ago, Ron and I had gone to Tyler, and we discovered the fact that Bonnie's grave wasn't even marked. There was no indication of where she was buried at all. And I went to the family, Bonnie's family, and found out that basically none of them except her was interested in putting a marker on Bonnie's grave. And so we put out a letter asking if anybody was interested in contributing to donate toward that deal. So we went up and we paid for the marker, and it was put in, what was it, February, Ron? Ron and I have been up there once to make sure that, they put it in. And the plan today was, there was quite a few people that wanted to go look at that. Bonnie's buried there, David's buried there, and so we decided at 3 o'clock this afternoon we would take a contingent of people up there in however many vehicles it takes for those that want to go. We know it's not in everybody's, maybe in their plans or whatever. They may have other things they want to do. It's going to be a 2.5 hour trip each way, so take that into consideration. But if you'd like to go see it, you're welcome. We will get to eat in just a second, but I'm going to let Jeff make an announcement just for a couple more minutes, okay?
Thank you, Clive. Thank you all for being here. First thing I want to just say that over the years as a radio and television talk show host, I've gotten to know many of the Branch Davidians. And let me tell you something, folks, they are good, honest, decent people. And basically, everything you heard from those daily FBI news conferences back in February of 1993 was really just a bunch of just garbage. That's a friendly way of saying it. This whole thing was just, and I'm going to echo what Mike Hansen just told me outside, and my friend, the late great Terry Liberty Parker, has been known to say that I believe there should be indictments on the tank drivers on this day of 1993, and on the people that gave the orders to drive tanks into Mount Carmel facility buildings while occupied by American men, women, and children. I believe there should be indictments. That's the only way you can really hold these people accountable for their deadly actions.
We tried that.
Well, I know some people think it's a pipe dream, but I mean, there should be indictments on the tank drivers that are still alive. There should be indictments on the people that gave the orders to drive those tanks into those buildings. And in one of the court proceedings, Clive, one of the tank drivers actually stated in court, and this was an AP story, actually stated in courtroom testimony, that he was given orders to drive tanks into buildings occupied by American men, women, and children. This was in court, he said this. By the way, I want to ask you, do you know a Bobby Grubbs? He was, okay, well, I won't touch that, but so that's basically all I got to say. Like I say, I know many of the Branch Davidians. I love them. They're great people. And unfortunately, unless we start holding these people accountable, these government agents accountable for their actions, then I'm afraid there's probably going to be more Wacos down the road. So anyway, we love you, Clive, and I put in a vote to have it next memorial at Mount Carmel.
Most of what we heard today from Catherine was, a lot of it we already knew. In our case, we experienced it. But the public don't know it. The fact that this thing was planned and carried out by not only the ATF, but the FBI, the different agencies that assisted them, the military, all of this stuff, the fact that they were plotting and planning, I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. I might sound naive, I might sound too Christian, or whatever you want to call it, in not wanting to accuse people of having that kind of a motive or that kind of an attitude about going in and killing men, women, and children. I'd like to be that way. I have been that way in the past. But, like I say, I believe in the devil. And whether people outright sell themselves to the devil, sell their soul to the devil, and allow the devil to direct them and openly serve the devil, maybe one thing, but there are lots of other people that allow the devil to influence them. In other words, what I'm trying to say is, a lot of these agents, if you met them in the street, would probably come across as nice guys. You wouldn't think that they would deliberately go out there with the intent of doing what ended up being done. But these kind of logs, statements that are made, and reports that have come down to us over the years since then, reveal that some of them had a pretty bad attitude. We're going to Waco for a turkey shoot, we're mean green killing machines. Statements like that do not reflect that they may have been members of Christian churches or whatever, and butter wouldn't melt in their mouth, sort of thing. We see that when things get going, there's a different mentality takes over the individuals involved. And so, like I say, these logs kind of back up, maybe give us a little more detail as to, on a day-to-day basis, what was happening. But we were pretty aware that they had intent. They weren't about to let too many of us get out, I don't believe. And so we can basically just pray for them. Because as David used to say, I don't care what these people are, whether they're ATF agents or FBI agents or whoever, he says, their souls to be saved. They have the opportunity to be saved, but in the last 19 years I haven't seen a whole lot of remorse or a whole lot of, sorrow for what they did, or certainly, Jeff says these people ought to be indicted. We tried that in a civil case, and for those of you that have been coming on a regular basis, you know that the federal judge that we had in the case was the same judge we had in the criminal case in San Antonio. And so we named everybody from Janet on Reno down to, the guy that swept the sidewalk practically in the case, and the judge let them all off. You could not name any agent, any officer in any law enforcement agency in the case, and he dismissed it all. So you might say we've tried that, been there and done that, and if you've got a corrupt system or you've got a corrupt judge, you don't get to square one, unfortunately.
So, there is no statute of limitations on mass murder.
Oh,
That could be a county indictment.
go ahead.
Can I have 1 minute?
Sure. I got a long minute. My clock's real slow.
I'm Randall from Truth Seekers in Austin, and along with Mike Hansen and the whole crew come up here, and we try to do this every year. And I'm appealing to people to let's really remember the 20th. And I really believe if there would have been dogs or horses or anything else other than human beings there, we would have all kind of uprisings, people marching in the street, and yet there were humans, lovely people, those that remain I've met. And this was all over a $200 fine, and yet we know that they practiced for almost a year at Fort Hood. And we know also that Bill Clinton, a president-to-be, toured the power plant out there. Now wait a minute. There was a Hellfire missile missing from Fort Hood that came back. And ever since then, there's been an escalation of tyranny. And I think we need to remember it next year and make it a national effort. And ask them, and a byline of next year's memorial should be step forward. Asking those people that did wrong to step forward and take their commands. Thank you.
You would think that if there were animals out there, people from all different organizations would be demonstrating and protesting about how they were treated. Well, unfortunately there was some. We had some dogs. They were the first ones that got shot. even though they were no threat to the agents, that was the plan. You put the dogs down before you get to the front door. And, everybody said, well, who shot first, and so forth. Out of the agents' own mouths, their own testimony was, well, we heard shots at the front door, and we figured they were taking care of the dogs. So we knew that was in the plan. If all the other agents in different areas thought that was what was being carried out, then that was part of the initial raid planning. According to their practice at Fort Hood, they were going to have us all laying on the floor in like 2 minutes flat, all handcuffed, all 130 or so of us. Steve?
Just a little known fact. That mock-up that they trained on at Fort Hood, a lot of that is covering up the fact that the Delta Force was solely involved in the beginning. That mock-up was built at Camp McCall at Fort Bragg. This is common knowledge, is it, amongst people in that area in Fort Bragg. I grew up where I lived. I know the guy who taught the ATF. That mock-up was built at Fort Bragg at Camp McCall. Delta Force trained on it privately. There was no ATF there. They trained on it as a team privately, getting all their tactics down. When they got it all down, they chose one guy. They disassembled that mock-up. They sent it to Killeen to Fort Hood along with that guy, and he was overseeing as an advisor these ATF guys. But the Army was involved long before the ATF. So a lot of people are not aware of that.
Right.
I found out, when I found out about it, because I knew the guy, I kept my mouth shut for 5 years. For fear of what would happen. And he got out, I knew that it was at the 2002 memorial, there was another gentleman here who had access to the community. He said one of his grandchildren was inside that car.
He made the statement that he overheard a radio communication and they said that we've got Koresh in our sights. We can extract them or we can take them out. What do you want us to do? And they told him, stand down, stand down. We've got another plan. That was on the morning of the 19th, which meant they were in a tunnel somewhere in sight with the capacity to go in wherever David was and take him and extract him or kill him on sight. So that wasn't ATF. Those guys, I mean, they might have been trained, but they didn't have that kind of training.
Okay. For those of you that have been patient, can smell the food or see the food and would like to get at it, we're going to let that be the next deal on the agenda. Eating together, fellowship together, mingle and shake hands with each other. A lot of these people here know each other. They've been coming regular, and we appreciate that. Some of you are new. So introduce yourselves and eat well. Let's stand and we'll have a blessing before we get started. And like I say, if anybody's interested in going to Tyler, see me or we'll take whatever number of vehicles it takes to get people up there if they need to go. Alrighty? Let's bow our heads. Father in heaven, we thank Thee for this opportunity to fellowship together, to meet together on this solemn memorial, this remembrance day of a terrible tragedy, a terrible event. We pray, Thee, Father, that the deaths of these people will not have been in vain, that through the message going out, multitudes can be saved, multitudes can be warned, and hopefully end up in Thy kingdom. We pray that You'll bless the hands that have worked on preparing this food and supplying it. We pray that You'll bless those that participate in this meal. May they eat to Thy glory. May we always remember those that are less fortunate. In the name of Thy Son, amen. Sheila, do you want to direct how it's to go down? please chew slowly so that there's food for others.
I might take care